Hello, everybody, and welcome to Wildfire Tribe Podcast. My name is Kylie.
And my name is Kylie as well, and it's lovely to have you. Actually, no, my name's Sean.
And we're very excited to be with you today because we're going to be talking about everything creative. This is Creativity, Creative Flow Part 2, and we're going to be talking about creative thinking, creative flow, and creative light.
Don't you think it's interesting the voices that you give to other people in your life, though? Like the voice that you have for me is like nothing like my nice voice for everybody else when you do impersonations. Usually, unless you're like a very good person, there's nothing like the person that you're impersonating.
Yeah, it's true. And it's crazy because all of those all that creativity and all of those sounds and frequencies that we're creating with our mouth and our mind, it all has the ability to co-create something, whether it's just a thought in somebody's mind that's taking them on a journey of a storyline, or it's actually creating something tangible and physical that we can hold in our hands.
And the power of your tongue, yet again, Kylie, you know, we spoke about this on another podcast. I think, I don't know whether we called it that, but we definitely broached the subject, the power of your tongue and what comes out of your mouth, and the ability to create something good or not as well, even just with the power of what comes out of your mouth. So sometimes when I impersonate you, and it's not a very nice voice, it's not really a very good job of creating the version of you that I would desire to have in my life the most either. It's just probably not necessarily making you feel too good about yourself either, I'd imagine.
No, that's right. And I think we have to be careful as parents and as friends and as sons and daughters to not be putting people down in our creativeness, that, you know, when we're doing that kind of stuff, because it is easy to sometimes make it negative, isn't it?
I think because I grew up in a family of 10 children, and our sport, apart from cricket, tennis and football, the sport that we played inside mostly, and the sport that we actually got the most recognition from our parents, and particularly my dad from, was actually hassling each other and teasing. So the more creative we were with our actual impersonating of other people's voices and behavior, and the quicker that we could bring somebody to tears and laugh and laugh and laugh at somebody at their own expense, it was like it was almost a competition to get there the quickest.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I think that there were probably the easier people in your family for everybody to tease, and that those people probably got copped it the most and were also not necessarily the ones that were able to give it back as hard.
And probably the ones that have been the most affected in life as it transpires as well, to do with the hassling they got from their own family members. That's also manifested in other behavioural issues for them throughout the rest of their life. I've no idea how we got to this subject when we come into this podcast to speak about creative flow, but that's what happens on Wildfire Tribe Podcast, doesn't it? It just sort of goes left, right, and everywhere.
And it often goes where it needs to go. And I think that's the thing. Sometimes the conversation just comes out of a place where it's current right now because people are listening and they need to hear some of these things. They need to be encouraged in their own journeys. They need to go, oh, actually, that I've experienced that, and that's affected me in a certain way. And how do I move through that? How do I move past that? How do I come into this great expansive place where my life starts to come alive in the way that I believe that it can?
So in your creativity, your creative flow of impersonating somebody else, if that's sort of something that happens in your life, just consider in a version of that person that's a far nicer version than you originally were going to do, or that you've done in the past. Maybe that's for me, you know, as I continue to impersonate my family. And the best thing about doing this podcast called Wildfire Tribe, and quietly confident that nobody in my family listens to it, and that if they do, that they just don't say anything about it anyway, so I can actually say whatever I want.
Yes, and not that that's ever stopped you before, because you've always just said whatever you want. So I love that. And that's why this is the conversational melting pot that it is. And that's what we love. We're excited that you've joined the conversation today. And it is a conversation. It's a back and forth. It's like a putting out there of new ideas. And part of this creative flow part 2 is that there's so much to start in play, and we are sons and daughters of the creator of all things, which is absolutely amazing when you think that we're made in the image of our Father, and that he is a creator that's created these most incredible places that we can visit, these most beautiful animals that we can see, and even just ourselves and the intricacies of our bodies and our mind. And part of this today is about creative thinking, which is actually the ability to consider something in a new way. And I think some of the things that you were talking about there, things people experience in their childhood and different things that have taken away almost the ability for people to think outside the box, because perhaps at times when they have, somebody's just shouted them down, or they've been stomped on, or they've been picked on or ridiculed for thinking different or thinking outside of the box. And part of what we love to do is to really just encourage outside the box thinkers.
Yeah, so like when you're growing up and you point at the clouds when you're a little person, you point at the clouds and you describe what it is that you see there. When you see a dragon or an elephant or whatever it is being in the clouds, and you have somebody usually older who at some stage of life, for whatever reason, tells you that that's not the case, that's not true, what you're seeing is not really there. And then you start to believe that exciting, mystical kind of world doesn't exist because the adult around you is telling you that it doesn't exist. And then you shut down that imagination side of you as well, and so we like to believe in our adulthood, and Kylie's older than me, as you can probably see on the YouTube.
I love it how you call it the YouTube, because that's what old people call things, the YouTube the TikTok.
We're doing the YouTube thing and the TikTok, and what else are we on? We're on the Instagram
and
we're
the
on
Facebook.
the Facebook. And what other things? We're on
Oh, well, we're on, of course, across all of the podcasting platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, Google, Amazon.
Welcome to the screen. Thank you for watching us on YouTube. It's amazing that we've progressed over the last couple of years from speaking on Facebook, and now we're on YouTube, and it's so cool to be here.
Creative thinking is all about a new approach. It's about a new approach to a problem, a new approach to, and I think one of the things about creativity and the way that we approach. So last week we talked about like creative flow in the art streams, mostly in music, in painting, drawing, and all of these cool kinds of things.
Singing.
Yes, singing.
I've been practicing.
And stand-up comedy. We talked about that too.
We did talk about stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
I've been practicing that as well.
So this week, it's more that place of innovation. So it's like, how do we connect with that creative place within ourselves where it allows us to step into expand thinking, like a place where we can be innovative in our ideas, like we can come up with solutions. Perhaps we're bringing conflict resolution into a situation in the workplace. Perhaps we're finding a new way to create code. Perhaps we are doing something that is creating a new income stream or a new revenue stream that hasn't been previously thought of, whether that's in our own business or whether that's in your workplace, whether that's in government, and there's so many different spaces that we can be engaging with creative thinking. So we're actually learning how to think outside the box. So creative thinking means, just that, thinking outside the box. Often it involves lateral thinking, which is the ability to perceive patterns that are actually not obvious.
That are actually not obvious, or maybe not even currently existing in the world.
Exactly.
That are not trending, that nobody else is doing. how do you find those ideas that you're not actually copying or twisting or changing in any way, but are actually just for you, like they're uniquely for you? We were talking about TikTok before and those things, you know, and there's always these trends of what's that person doing, what's that person doing. But who is the first person to introduce a new trend? How do you become that person?
Exactly. And could it be that we could be in union, in our unity with our Creator, with our God, with our Father in heaven? Could we be co-creating something, coming up with that fresh, unorthodox idea out of that place of the heavenly realms? Could we? Could we be coming at, like, when you think about a place of creativity, like it's interesting because you will go for a ride on your bike because it's this beautiful place of connection with your Creator. And then you'll come back and you'll just like create something.
Yeah, well, that's what you've got to do, isn't it? You've got to find your place of connection with Him, the creator of everything. Where do you connect with the creator of everything? Where is your place? Is your place with your head down and your bum up in the garden? If it's the place where you feel most connected with the creator of the universe and you're looking for a new idea, a new blueprint, a new download of something to introduce into the world, then you better get out in the garden and put your head down and put your bum up and spend some time out there pulling out weeds or whatever it is that you're doing and try and find out there, because it's just a matter of knowing where that has happened for you in the past. I guess when I'm talking like that, I'm also assuming that has happened to people in the past, or that they know where that place is. But I guess that's not the case for everybody.
Well, how do you find out? Like, how did you get to that place where you thought, wow, my place of connection is on the motorbike?
Okay, so, and it is important that I talk personally about things like that. So for me, the creator of the universe, God Himself, introduced Himself to me riding through a motorbike. So I guess for me, it's easy for me because I know where that place is. So if I'm ever finding for me that there's a time where I'm just a bit muddled with my thoughts, I'm not sure about what to do next or why something's difficult at the moment, or any of those, times in your life where you need to make a decision but you don't know how to make it, that's what I do. I go for a ride with my helmet on, and for whatever reason, that's the place where I feel connected with Him. Maybe it's just as simple as, actually for me, I don't listen to music. I don't have anything playing in my helmet. I've only got thought inside my helmet and whatever the bike is doing. Maybe it's just as simple as that. So if you don't know where your place is, and that hasn't been your experience ever before, and you're still looking to find what it is, I think that it's quite possibly going to be in a place of quietness. I think that it's fair to say that that's likely. So maybe put on some nice, soothing, quiet music and go into a nice, quiet place, somewhere where you can not necessarily lie down and run the risk of going to sleep, but sit in a comfortable position, listen to some nice, soothing music that has no words, that's not telling you anything, and connect with God in that place. That's why I say if gardening's your thing, because it's quite likely that in the garden you're out in nature, you're seeing the shape of the leaves, you're smelling the dirt, it's a real sensory place for you to be, and you're not being distracted out there by things of the world, the busyness of the world. So that would be my tip. I think, Kylie, is to try and find a place where you're not tangled up in the busyness of the world, for starters.
Yeah. And I find for me too that often my place of creativity is in one form of creativity. Then often it's great for me to spend some time in my art studio where I actually get out my paints and I start painting. And for me, I like to do that in silence. I don't like to have music on or anything like that, like just the normal noises that I would normally hear. So sometimes that's birds chirping and that's a dog barking next door, or that's like cars driving past outside, or just those normal things. And then I start to get into this place of creative flow, and then I need to start taking notes. So then I come with these other creative ideas because I'm thinking through things and I'm already in that creative place. It's like it opens up a piece of my brain that needs to actually be activated in the space of creativity, or the forms that I use to communicate. And for mine, most of them are within the art world. But I think that could easily be possible for people that are even in the science world or the technology world, in economics, or, you know, some of these other spaces like maths and some of these places that...
Nobody does maths, Kylie.
Well, maths is actually like an art form for people that love it. Like, what about that movie that we watched, The Beautiful Mind?
Yeah, I know. People do maths. Okay. Just saying it because I just wanted to shut down your conversation and say something creative myself.
I love it. It's pretty wild.
But yes, people do maths. I was going to interrupt and say, I've a friend that actually communicates crystal clear with God when he's lifting weights.
I love that.
And that's just an experiential experience. Experiential. It's an experiential experience, which is saying the same word twice. That's Now, where were we going with that? Where I was going with that, what I had come to mind was that when I was talking about quiet time, you know, meditation, things like that, it's no rule either. You know? So let's just get that clear, that there's nothing that we speak about in our conversations about the mysteries of God and the expansiveness of him, the expansive conversation we have about knowing full well that we'll never fully comprehend him in entirety because it's just not possible. So knowing that, it is very likely that there are people on the planet right now that will experience the fullness of God and will receive downloads and have crystal clear revelation from God whilst listening to music such as AC/DC, Thunderstruck, Metallica, anything at all, because we don't limit to just the quiet space in the quiet room with the quiet soothing music with the nice little candle, because God created you uniquely to actually experience this world for yourself, and so that he could experience this world inside of you for himself as well. So there's a chance that he wants to experience this world that he created inside of you in a rock concert somewhere and actually have an experience with you one-on-one in that place. So just know that anything that we talk about which is trying to help you understand the place where you're likely to hear from him is just a point. It's not, okay, if you're going to ever hear from God, it has to be in a Catholic church and it has to be with a man with a green hat on. That's the only way that you're ever going to hear from God.
One of those really cool pointy hats?
Yes.
I'd like to wear one of those pointy hats. Every now and then I've thought to myself, it would just be cool to like get ordained just to wear those cool outfits.
I don't think you have to go through the drama of doing all the studies and pretending to like the people that you're around for like 4 or 5 or 6 years the whole time just to be able to get the opportunity to wear a hat. You can just make one.
Do you think so?
This is called Creative Flow Part 2, Kylie. We can make that green pointy hats and I'll just, what's the word for like not anoint you? I'll just tell you that you're a reverend or whatever it is that you be.
I love it. It's not necessarily that I want to be any of those things. I just want to wear the outfit.
That's what I mean. So why would you go through the 4 or 5 or 6 years to become the thing that you don't want to be when you can just wear the outfit?
I love it. So I love it. Like a little creative thought is kind of like throwing a rock into a lake and it just going, and then it creates this amazing ripple that can go out across the whole entire lake with this sound and this frequency and this contagiousness. That's what it is, where all of the drops of water in that lake all start going, hold on a sec, somebody dropped in with a new idea. How cool is that? Creativity takes courage. What do you think about that?
Creativity takes courage. So I was thinking today about creativity, and I was thinking about the ability for just myself to be able to speak in front of a camera, among some of the other things that we do, including the stand-up comedy and the music, etc., that we've done in the past as well. Because I remember a time where I was so shy that I would not speak on a microphone in front of anybody. I remember when I was 17 and I had a girlfriend that I actually broke up with at that age because I was too shy to even talk to her at school in front of other people.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, hey?
And then I've got to the point not be anywhere near as concerned about what people think about me and just let it flow. And I was thinking about it today and how that has come about. And I think part of having the courage to do something, it seems to take a little bit of courage to be able to actually start doing something. And then there's more courage that comes to you by doing it. So by agreeing to actually do a podcast, and as time has gone by, as I've done it, I've got more courageous and more confident in doing it, and it's become more natural to be able to do it as well. So does it take courage to be creative? It seems to take a little bit of courage, but when you step past that line into that creative space, it becomes contagious, it becomes bigger, it becomes easier, and it becomes something that actually can snowball and blossom into something beyond what you thought it was going to be in the beginning, to the point where you look for more places to be creative because you have more confidence that you have the ability to create just by being courageous in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can just see that as you're speaking, I can see that slipstream of creativity just opening up and pouring out of that, just pouring out this frequency of creativity into everybody that's listening.
Because it's not just for us, is it? This is for everyone. We were, just before we started, we ripped in a quick little prayer. That'd be good for all of you Christian people to know that we actually did do a prayer. We're actually, serious Christian people that pray before they do their podcast. And we did a prayer. I don't know why I was pulling that face.
Once again, it's that impersonating creativity that's flowing out of you.
Impersonating serious Christian prayer face. We pray for the podcast that this podcast would reach people that are desiring creativity in their life, and that it would meet them right exactly where it was supposed to at their future, whenever this, whenever you see this with your eyeballs and hear this with your ears, and that this podcast would give the courage to step across into that creative space that you have dared not be before. This is not a podcast about how courageous we are and how we do all of these things. We share those experiences with you merely just to show you that all things are possible. But this is for you as well. Your opportunity, your creative explosion to occur is just one step away. You only need to step across that imaginary line that for some reason you think is there that doesn't even exist, to step across into the expansiveness of your creativity, for it to blossom into something more than you've ever believed is possible. And we've prayed that for you. So it's done.
Yeah, that's it. I love it. Creativity is the greatest rebellion in existence. And that is said by Osho.
Who is Osho?
He's one of those wise dudes, maybe like one of those Indian guru guys.
He's probably Japanese. Have you ever looked him up?
Yeah, I can picture him. I can see his face.
Can we get Osho here? Can we get some of our helpers in the background that are filming, like the cameraman and all the people we have working for us, just to, like they do on Joe Rogan? Can we just get somebody to pull up Osho on the screen so we can have a look at him? Oh, there's no one here. We're it.
I love it. The whole earth is filled with his glory. I think that's pretty wild. And I think that brings us into this place of like engaging with the fullness of who we have all been, seeing the creative flow that flows from within us to water the earth with new ideas, with new concepts, with new innovations, with framing up a brand new future, one that we so desperately want. So many people don't really live within the constructs of what has already been created in the past, which often we find ourselves currently living in a created structure of the past. But we're wanting to co-create something beautiful for our futures. We're wanting to step into something that is absolutely magnificent, that is dripping with the glory of God, because it flows from within us, and we are constantly coming into a greater glory. We're moving from glory to glory, which is moving from what we currently know to be goodness into goodness that we've not yet experienced. And that's pretty exciting.
More, Kylie. We want more. We want more of him, more of him who is love, like he is the being of love. And in our pursuit of the more of anything else that we are chasing on earth, including the creativity that we're speaking of, it comes through the pursuit of the more of him. So you may as well, if you don't know where to start, if you don't know where your next step is, just drop everything and pursue him, because he is where the is. Pursue him to find out what your next is, the more of him.
Well, I just believe that we are at this point in time where humanity has come to this place of creative explosion. And I think we can really choose to engage with that, or we can just be comfortable with what has already been.
And that's okay too, isn't it?
Well, it is. Of course it is. But I think that a lot of people that will come on to listen to the podcast are probably at this place where they're going, well, what is new for me? What is my part in co-creating the next 5 years of my life, or the next 10 years of my life, or the next 50 years of my life?
How do we get to the point where we understand that creation is groaning for us to be the fullness of what we've always been created to be? How do we get to that point where we believe that is happened? Is by pursuing more.
That's right.
Yeah, I agree with you. I guess when I sort of, say things like, but it's okay, isn't it, that people find comfort in the sameness? It's allowing people who choose to be comfortable in the sameness to be okay with that as well.
That's right.
Because for whatever reason, that's where you ought to be. And we always talk about how God has created us uniquely as individuals, and he has different opportunities even laid out, different timelines for different people as well. And you get to choose.
And I think part of that being okay too, that when we get stepped away with our creativity, with our projects that we have on our creative scroll in our life, is that then we're not constantly looking over the fence of somebody else's life going, oh, well, they should be doing more, or they should be doing less, or why are they doing that, or why aren't they doing that? Why shouldn't we do that because they're doing that? Because we're just lost in our own beautiful song. We're lost in our creative flow that is bringing our peace, our part to the fullness of what can be in the future. And I think that is a really great place to start. And when we let go of needing to fix everybody else, and we just be who we're created to be, then we'll just find by default that the creative consciousness of humanity will rise to such a point where the unfolding of our next, of our new.
Something that I find interesting, I've spoken to you about it recently. I'm talking with my eyes closed because those lights that we've got on are really bright, and hopefully that's okay. Something I've been thinking about is the trend happens through our earth. So at some point, somebody decides that they're going to use material that is brown to make clothing out of. And then all of the fashion world makes everything out of brown this year. Doesn't matter what it looks like, doesn't matter if it's men, skirt, women, hats, whatever, brown is the color. And then we find that brown becomes the color that we paint our houses. And then we find that brown is the color that we actually desire our cars to be. Have you noticed in the last few years that cars have changed colors? Camo greens and browns and grays are the thing that we desire. I don't believe that we have decided that that's what we desire. I believe that that's been created by somebody who's got it down and who has a unique plan that has decided to actually inject it, release it into the world. And people are just following what it is that's been introduced. And I'm not saying it's good or bad or indifferent, but I just am curious about how it is that as humans that we find ourselves following things that we don't even realize that we're doing, and why it is that we don't just wear red or wear yellow or wear green or whatever color it is that we decide to wear, but things come through in fashion trends and they're released in, through fashion, through house colors, through colors, clothing. I just find that very interesting.
And I think that at some point, somebody has initiated that creative flow. At some point, there has been within the fashion world people who have stepped into spaces and gone, nobody's using brown. Let's brown.
Brown has been used for at least 30 years. And so let's make brown the color.
So the people that are creating these essentially are the innovators of this new space. And then by the time it gets to us, who are in a country town in Australia, which is usually like 5 years behind most of the rest of the world.
Well, country towns in Australia are about 5 years behind the capital cities in Australia, which are about 10 years behind the countries.
So it's quite funny because then you start going, everybody's just wearing brown because everybody's wearing brown. But everybody's wearing brown because someone decided that nobody was wearing brown and we could wear brown again.
Why are we wearing white rimmed sunglasses in our podcast?
Well, because I haven't seen anyone wearing white rimmed sunglasses in our podcast.
And you know what's happening by wearing white rimmed sunglasses in our podcast? Every now and again on TikTok and places like that, we're asked, I love the sunnies. Where do you get the sunnies from? Where can I get a pair?
Yes, well, you can probably find a pair at wildfiretribe.life. No, you can't actually at the moment, but that is often what a lot of people do.
That's the whole point.
And that is innovation.
Something that is new and you're comfortable, wear it well for whatever reason. It doesn't even have to be a reason. It's not as if wearing these sunglasses is any better for us than wearing any other color or wearing none at all. It's just we've decided to wear them because we like wearing them. They're just different. And we're just curious to see where it goes. And perhaps if we keep on being asked, where can I get a pair? Perhaps we'll start selling them then.
Yeah, it's true. Creative flow stoppers. There are things that can stop our creative flow.
Yeah. So I imagine that you've got something prepared to help me understand that that's the case.
Well, I just want to talk about Barbara Simon. She talks about this. And so I had just a piece of, she says, she speaks about how you can stop this cycle. So by simply moving your consciousness into neutral. So what do you think neutral would be?
Like a car, in neutral where it's not going anywhere?
Yeah, but a consciousness neutral is into non-judgment. And I thought that was really interesting. So by simply moving our consciousness into neutral or non-judgment, this means that you stop throwing valuable emotional currency at the bad circumstances of life. And it means that negative influences can no longer control you. So when we change our focus, we can actually change our circumstances and we can change our reality. So it kind of was a little bit like what I was saying before, when you take your energy and you place it into the creative space rather than looking at what everybody else is doing and all the things that you don't like, looking at all of why isn't this person doing that and this person doing that, or looking at the things that frustrate you about what other people are doing. And that's easy. We see a lot of that on social media. People are just slinging things back and forwards, and people are often distracted from their creative space by looking at what's going on in the other creative spaces, and sometimes being filled with emotions like jealousy, or being filled with emotions like frustration, or going into those places where you're beating your own self up because you're seeing what everybody is doing. And I had that idea, I thought of that a year ago, and instead of just keeping on coming back and putting your energy into that creative process that you've been designed to do, that we can actually waste or throw away that emotional energy into these spaces where we're wasting and actually judging everybody else doing.
Yeah, the courage to be creative and the courage to just believe that what you have to release into the world is worthy to be released, and that you have the ability to do so, and that the world is in fact waiting for it or desiring it or needing it as well. It's a very interesting space to function in full time in the creative space.
It is. It's not easy. I think that that place of non-judgment as well, that takes so much energy away. When you can activate that, it's like getting the keys to the kingdom. It's like coming into the constant flow of creativity with your creator. It's like all of a sudden, all I can see are the incredible heavenly hosts that are here to partner with my creativity, that I can see the angels that are here to walk with me, that I can have this time to partner in that space of blooming and blossoming in the fullness of who I have always been, to bring forth that thing that is in me, that frequency. It actually, coming into that place of neutral and non-judgment, raises your frequency into this space where you're tapping into a heavenly frequency that allows you to flow with things that you couldn't just come up with if you stay in that lower frequency and vibration.
If you're in a workplace where you're feeling like your creativity is being hampered and you're not actually sure if that is ever going to change, then I challenge you to think about an escape route. And the reason I say that is because if you find yourself constantly dreaming about being a creative type and it's not happening for you, you need to develop the courage at some stage to step into that, or you will be forever wondering. And I was just thinking before today, as I was thinking in the lead up to the past, about some of our experiences in the past, so that we can share some of our experiences with you rather than just talking about hypotheticals. And there's been times in our careers working under other people. There's been times in churches also where we've served, etc. We've had ideas of different ways to do things, but they haven't been embraced. And when you're a creative person and you feel like that's, a calling that you have, that's an experience that God has for you in your life, and it's not championed and it's constantly shut down or it's deferred till maybe later on, I challenge you to consider how it is that you step into the courage of making that change. Because if that is never going to change for you, and you're going to get to the point where you're in your lazy boy recliner at the end of your life, when you've retired at the ripe old age of 83, sitting back desiring and thinking about what it is that you should have done in your life, perhaps you should have actually stepped in your creative space, and it's not too late then either.
No, that's right.
But I guess it's just because we were also talking about courage before with creativity too. I challenge you to take that step, that courageous step towards creativity. We've had to do that a few times. We've had to step out of spaces where we weren't being championed into places that we desired to be. It can be difficult to leave a town, a group of friends and all of that, can't it?
Yeah, definitely. But I think it's one of those things too. Sometimes you need to keep pressing forward into the place where you're going to be continuing to vibrate at your highest frequency. We never want to bring anybody into that place of condemnation or feeling like maybe they haven't chosen something that is like big enough or wild enough or something like that. But I feel like we're really wanting to champion or encourage within you that courage to step into fullness of who you already are.
It doesn't even have to be a big life event that I'm alluding to either.
No, it doesn't.
You know, it can be, I've always really wondered what it would be like to paint a room in my house black. I've always really wondered. Well, that's creative.
Exactly.
Maybe is now your time to be courageous and choose a room and go get the paint and do that, because there's no time like the present, and how will you ever know unless you do it?
Exactly. And even just, you know, stepping out and maybe joining an art society or becoming part of the chess club or
the
doing
local brass
something.
bands, Kylie. You should go and join the band and play trombone.
Yeah, exactly. Like that is a word for someone.
Are you going to do that?
Oh, no, I'm not going to do that.
I just said that you should.
I love it. You know, Jesus, he talks about this way, this place of no judgment and this place of unconditional love. Like it's this way, it's this hidden treasure that is within. Like it's beautiful. It's actually like amazing. It's this valuable emotional stabilizer that's being siphoned by those that consume energetic currency as a food source. So what do we consume as people? We consume energy. And it is the same for energetic beings, that we're plugging into this place. It's one of those things, I think, that you can find yourself when you're really coming alive in these spaces, that people will want to plug into your deliciousness. And that's something pretty wild as a creative, that we're creating something that people are wanting to be a part of. And I think when we're creating out of that place of no judgment and just unconditional love, then that is something in itself that is very unique.
In the beginning. I don't know why I always do that voice when I read the Bible.
Probably because like when you listen to the Bible being read on some of those
that might be what it
Bible
is.
apps.
On the Bible app, there's always that man with a serious voice.
Yeah, he talks in that slow, like deep voice.
All right, I'll just use my normal voice. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So I just wonder what that was like, you know, when God was cruising around in the expansive nothingness, when or before all of these things were created, what that looked like. Was he stroking his big long white beard and just going, now's the beginning, now I feel like creating something? And he just spoke it into existence. He spoke everything into existence that we've ever seen, that we've ever witnessed, that we've ever dreamed is possible. He's already created everything that we've even believed is possible. When we talk about the expansive conversations that we have with people about, you know, traveling at the speed of light and beyond, and what science has discovered and given the terminology to, of the wind passing over the front of an airplane, etc., and what that is, like God invented, he created all of that in speech in a moment in time, plus more than we will ever understand. It's completely with our current understanding to appreciate that he also has creativity in store for us.
Absolutely.
He's our Father.
Yeah.
We're his children. We have creativity inside of us.
Absolutely. And it is this a crazy, amazing frequency, this ability to create. It's like last year we did a podcast on for energy, and it's like this place of thinking and then speaking into being these incredible things. And that's exactly what God did in the beginning. Like he spoke into existence all of these beautiful things.
What are you going to do that's different in the creative space than anything you've ever done before? Is there something that you've been dreaming about doing in the creative space that you put off till later? I'd love to know what it is. You know, a lot of the time when we're doing these podcasts, we're talking to a camera or these little microphones down by the river, and we never ever find out who listens to it. And it's been listened to in over 40 countries around the world by many, many, many people. And
thousands of times.
And we don't know who is listening, but I'd really love to know, what is it that whilst you're listening to this exact podcast, are you feeling like stepping into for the first time in your life? I would love to know that this podcast has encouraged you to take on something creative, that now is your time. It is your time. It's up to you to choose when your time is, and your time is now. I would love to know what it is that you're going to do with your creative DNA that you've been given.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love it.
Let's get past words. Let's get past the point of just talking about things that can happen, things that are for your future, possibly, but maybe another day, or maybe, you know, in 20 years when you retire. But let's get past that point, and let's actually be people that are activated into doing things that we talk about, not just being possible, but actually doing them, putting your hand to the paintbrush or the pottery or the gardening or whatever it is that you've got in you ready to release. I would love to know what that is. Let's make this happen. Let's not just be a podcast that just talks about stuff and then nothing ever comes from it.
Yeah, it's true. Well, I'll just read a little bit out of my book, The New Now.
Which you wrote.
Exactly.
It was not in existence before you sat down on your little old typewriter with the ribbon.
Yes.
I thought you're blocking out the light, but no, you're holding up to the camera. Before you actually started doing that, let me ask you this. How did it come to you as an idea that you ever thought that you should write a book or could write a book? How did you find the courage to actually put it into place and what did that voice look like or sound like?
I was thinking about that this week, you know, and I started to think about all of the things as a little girl that I dreamt about. And then I started to realize that some of those things now have actually become a reality. So for me, I always wanted to write a book. I don't remember not wanting to write a book. I wrote a book, like a children's book in primary school for an assignment. And I remember thinking at that time, wow, I want to write a real book when I grow up. And I think that it's always been with me. Like, I've started writing a book so many times over the last 30 years. I've started, like, my very first book that I started to write was way back when we were first together, and it was a book called You Get to Choose. And then from then there was all these different times that I've started to write a book. But I think it was, you know, you have to just make that decision to be courageous and put everything on the line and create space in your life to be able to bring your creativeness into fullness. And I think I started to realize too that with some of these other things that I have dreamt about doing, like I dreamt that I used to want to be in media, and I used to want to be a singer. So I had all of these dreams when I was little, and these were formed when I was small. So when I was driving around on the back of the ute as a farmer's daughter, and I would just hold on to the bar with my hair blowing in the wind, and I would sing to the crops, like to the wheat and the oats. And I would imagine that it was a stadium full of people, and I'd be so excited. I'd be presenting my songs, and I'd just be like singing whatever happened to come out of my mouth at the time. I just make stuff up all the time. And then as I've got older, you kind of just do life. And now I've started to realize, just in the last week, that, oh my goodness, some of these things that are starting to happen for us now that we're on this super creative journey where we're encouraging one another in our creative exploits, as difficult as it is, that some of these things are starting to come true, and they've actually been planted there, I believe, from the beginning. And I was connected most to them in that place of imagination, where when you're a child, your imagination just goes wild, and you can be in this place of believing that these things can be your life.
So you've always had that deep down desire, however it is that you describe it, and maybe people listening and watching can identify relate to that as well. Maybe that's something that, maybe there's also a dream that you had since you were young, that you wanted to perform ballet or some type of dancing. You know, has that been your dream and you still haven't done it? So you've gone from a time of singing to the oats and the wheat out in the paddock, wanting to be a singer in front of people. Now you're speaking on a podcast, you speak at events, you've written a book, you've written heaps of music, you've painted heaps of pictures, you're actually living within that dream that you've always desired. You've had the courage, as we've spoken of before today, about actually putting that into action. And from there, things are just getting bigger and bigger for you. You're developing more in each of those spaces. You're writing more, you're painting more, you're doing more film work, you're doing more of everything as time goes by. Are you working on you're working on more books as well? I'm assuming you're always doing something.
Yeah, well, I've already started writing that. So in the last couple of months, I've written the first 4 or 5 chapters of the next book. So that's exciting. So that's starting to come together, and that I imagine that will come together over the course of the last part of the year. And I'd like to see something happen with that next year.
But we're also desiring to tour.
Yeah,
we're
that's
also
right.
desiring to tour with
Exactly.
a show,
yeah.
sing, comedy, etc.
So how can this happen?
How can this happen for people that are watching and listening?
Exactly.
In their own lives, because their life is outside of us to people that are watching and listening to us. To us, lots of people are probably thinking, well, it's okay for them. They've got this or they've got that, or they've had a good run here, or this has happened for them, or fallen into the right place. How are you about to encourage people who are watching and listening that they can step into that space themselves?
Yeah, well, I'm just going to read a little excerpt from my book. This is The New Now. If you haven't got it, you should get it, because it's really wild, and it's full of a whole bunch of really practical life applications and activations. It's from chapter 6, which is intimacy with creation's creator. And I'll just read a little bit toward the end of the chapter. There is a garden within our hearts, and it is a place where God wants to walk with us. There is too a pasture, a lush green field of dreams. Yeshua wants to reveal to you. There are rivers of living water and streams of life. There are wonderful mountains of abundance and plains of discovery. There are ancient doors and pathways that open into beautiful throne rooms and tunnels and halls. This is a relationship like no other. This is a new way of living. It is a path of righteousness and a relationship filled with connection and discovery on the highest planes. Open up your imagination and engage with things beyond the here and now. Peace flows from the throne rooms of heaven like a river right into your everyday, right into your new now. And I think the revelation that I wrote from this is being is far more powerful than doing. And I think it comes from that place of when we first stepped out of the busyness of our life that was stopping us from being fully activated in our creative pursuits. I think we had to move through this time of quietness where we learnt to just stay still. And part of that was we had closed our hotel and we started turning it into a house/retreat center. And we had created within it this little space that we had called the chapel. And we were thinking to ourselves, oh, maybe we'll invite people. Maybe we should start a church service, or we should get people to come in and be a part of what we have created here. And the Father spoke to us, the Lord spoke to us about it one day. He said, "You've built this chapel just for me and you." So out of that place, we just started coming into the chapel that we had created, which was this amazing space. Like, it was absolutely beautiful. And we would just come in there, wouldn't we, babe? And we would just kneel down on the ground and basically just cry for hours.
Yeah, we cried a lot.
Because we were coming into that place of stillness, or this place of transition where we needed to let go of all of the doing and come into this place of being. And then it was out of the being that we came into a place of activation. And I think that's a really different thing to just doing. It's a place of intentional activation where you're stepping into the fullness. You're actually activating your dreams, your creative pursuits. You're breathing life that's coming from the very depths of your being into the fullness of everything it can be. And that's what started to happen out of that place of just finding that quiet place, breathing in and engaging with our imaginations. We were picturing ourselves standing in front of these beautiful doors in lush green pastures, in fields by rivers, just with Jesus. And then we were allowing ourselves to find that place of rest that then allowed us to come into a new level of creative flow. And I think we've been flowing in that now for a number of years.
Yeah, all of that is true. And I just want to go back to the crying a lot bit. Just when you said that, it just reminded me of why that was at that time as well. You know, you go through times where you don't understand why things are not working as you thought they should. And in that time, having to close a business that we had gone into and set up and wanted to run very well. Probably did run it as well as we could, but it just didn't all pan out in the way that we had desired. So you come to a place where your identity is in the job as well, in the busyness of what you're doing. And when you know that there needs to be a change take place, the letting go of the identity that you have is the bit that made me cry. You know, that's the bit that I think the letting go part is the bit that's emotional. It's like everything, and this has happened to us a number of times in a number of different ways across the last, what is it now? Probably 12 or 13 years we've sort of been walking out this kind of existence where we're prepared to pick things up and let them go. But saying that, when you say that you're prepared to pick things up and let them go, it seems like that becomes your challenge. And when it's time to let go of things, such as your identity in your job or your position in your town or your fame or your wealth or whatever it is, when you know that you're being called into something different, or you're requiring courage to step into your creative next, as we've been speaking, the letting go part can seem to really hurt. It's a part that, for me, I feel like there's never been a time where my next has come where I haven't had to let go of what was. You know, you have to let go of what was to take on your next, which is that courageous step. You can't seem to carry both at the same time. It hasn't been my experience. I know that we're all different. I know that some people have careers and step quite with ease into the next thing. It hasn't been my experience, and I'm just talking about my experience and the tears, etc., of letting things go. So for us to step into this creative space where things are starting to get a little bit of traction now, where we've got the time, we've made the time, it's cost everything that we've ever had to get to this point, and that's where the tears have come. But we believe this is where we're supposed to be, and it hasn't been easy. But I just want to be real about it. It's not, everybody's life is different. Every season of everybody's life different. And because we do this podcast as a couple, we've been married for 30 years, we do everything together and always have. I just want to speak out of that place of honesty, of actually sharing with people what it is actually really like for us as a couple and what it's been like. Not to say that it's your journey, but sometimes it hurts to let go of the thing that you used to have to step into the next.
Yeah, it does. And I think it perfectly winds back into what we spoke about last week when we were talking about finding that creative flow, or engaging with that creative flow, is getting to that place where you've become so practiced in your art form that finding that place of flow comes from the letting go. And it is letting go of the control. It's almost like what you're talking about too. It's like letting go of the control of your life. It's finding that place of identity that's not in what we do. And it's so hard. It's so hard when you get to the point where you've built something and people see you in a certain way. They look at you through, whether it's through rose-colored glasses or whether it's, you see people, but you really don't. Like, you need to be able to get to that place where you can just let go of all of that to come into this place where we really start to see things come alive. And I think that's where we want to encourage everybody to get to, in whatever capacity it is that you're walking that out. Because on the other side of letting go is this ability to start to shine. And that's what we want to see, isn't it? Like, we want to see people come into that place where they can really start to shine. And I think if we can let go of the perceived idea about what success looks like, that's really hard, because we want everything to work out how we want it to work out. And sometimes it's just hard. And that's not a reflection of that we're doing bad. It's just, sometimes it's hard. Is even really a reason that you could have made it any better?
And sometimes progress in your life doesn't look like what the world thinks it looks like as well. Sometimes there's progress happening within you as well that other people can't necessarily see. And sometimes you don't even know about that happening to yourself until a circumstance arises where you actually navigate it in a different way to how you used to do it. And then you think to yourself, oh, how did I do that? How did I change? How did that become a characteristic or a part of my personality now, that I deal with things differently because you've decided to walk whatever it is that you're walking out, even when you don't understand what it is. And for us, that's been in the quiet place. That's that place of, okay, God, this doesn't make sense right now. I thought that by now you would have had this thing open up for me, and you haven't. Okay, but I trust that I'm still heading in the right direction. Am I still heading in the right direction? Oh, actually, I feel like I'm still headed in the right direction. Okay, I have to trust.
Yeah. And in the meantime, he's saying, well, Sean, you're powerful. You get to choose. Which direction do you want to go in? What do you want to happen?
I want to go in the direction that is the best timeline that is laid out for my life since before the beginning of time, even if it requires some of the difficult stuff that it's already required, because I just know that he's with me at all times. And I know that it doesn't matter which path I choose. If I choose to turn back to an easier timeline, a place, a career, something that I know how to do, where if I choose to go back there, that it's not like God's going to go, oh no, you're blowing it now. Nope, I'm not with you now. Nope. When you get to heaven, if you happen to make it there, I'm going to put you in a different compartment. You're not going to be in the high rollers area once you get it. It's not like that. I don't think like that. I just think that there is, though, like an optimum path and And it doesn't mean it's the easy one. And it's that narrow path that's spoken of in the Bible as well. Perhaps the narrow path is a path that is extremely narrow, and you can turn around and go back, and perhaps you can take wrong turns or diversions every now and again, but they're not catastrophic. They're not, God's not like saying to anybody, if you go down that path, I'm not there with you. That's a ridiculous theological understanding. But the path that I continue to pursue is that one that I just have peace about beyond understanding, that peace that surpasses all understanding, that place of knowing that's his voice, that's what he has for you, even though it doesn't make any type of rational or logical sense according to what the world would normally be doing.
Yeah, it's true. I love it. So we are just believing with you for this week, for just this deeper connection to the divine, to your creator, for you to come into this place of inspiration on your spiritual journey into the depths of who you already are, as you're unpacking and going into those places that you've been thinking about maybe for a while. I really would love to do this, or maybe I'd love to do that, or I've got this creative idea that it's just always been there, but I've never done anything with it. I've never stepped into it. So we're just standing with you, believing with you for that to come into the fullness of whatever that's going to look like in your life. And that would just be an adventure. And sometimes it doesn't have to look like some big world-changing thing. It can just be that beautiful, sweet place of connection with you and your creator, and bringing something into the world that maybe just for you. And that's really special too.
I would like to thank people for supporting us in our creative exploits. Exploit, that is the word. We have had so much support over the years in everything that we've chosen to do in all of our marriage for the last 30 years, and incredibly so in the last couple of years as well. Moving into this space that we've been talking about in the last two podcast episodes. And we've also got people supporting us that we've never met, as well as people that we have, and family, etc. as well. And we just, as we've been talking, we just got a supporter via Patreon, which is a $10 a month support, which is amazing. Like, it's just amazing that there's people in the world that would give us $10 a month to continue doing what we are doing, whether you know all of the things we're involved in or not. We just thank you that flow continues to happen for us, and we just return that blessing back to you tenfold as well, that it would be that $10 would multiply into an idea or into the courage that you're acquiring to step into your next.
Yeah, absolutely. And we had an amazing and an immersive conversation this week with one of our beautiful people on our Patreon Zoom, which was amazing. So that is going to be up on our Patreon page for people to be able to listen to. It was an amazing conversation with an incredible person called Justin Varco, and him and his wife do some amazing health things on the Gold Coast in Australia. And we had just a really expansive conversation.
Nadia's website is She Is Well.
Yeah, She Is Well.
Nadia's website is sheiswell.au. Go and have a look and support those guys who are also a part of Wildfire Tribe and have been along on the ride with us for a couple of years now.
Yeah, if you want to know anything health in the health mystical space and just health in general, these guys are really doing some incredible things and an amazing journey themselves. So that will be up in the next couple of weeks for any of our patrons to be able to have a look at it. It's a really great time, a great conversation that we had. So, and for anybody else too, we will be doing a live Zoom next month as well, in May and in June as well. We're just creating a space for our patrons and us to have some really crazy cool conversations. What's going on in your life? We would love to hear. And what does that look like as we journey together on the unknown pathways into the mystery that is Him?
Join Patreon, join in the conversation once a month, and tell us what it is that you're desiring courage for to do, or tell us what it is that you're doing. And let's just talk about expanding those dreams that you have and that reality of expansion in your life in the creative space. We'd love to be a part of your adventure as well.
Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us this week, guys. We love you lots, and we will be talking to you again next time.
Okay, bye.
Bye.